I'm Christine Perey. I'm involved in augmented reality in a variety of different ways for vendors as well as end customers. And a few years ago, I had the pleasure of collaborating with large enterprises and suppliers of augmented reality technologies to form the first industry alliance, a consortium of companies that help to accelerate the AR ecosystem. So that's a simple way of saying that we all believe in the enterprise augmented reality benefits, and we all know that there are many, many great challenges. So we can work together to improve the outcomes. Today's session is, as you can see, we're going to have a discussion to talk among area members. These are really the experts in the field, and we're going to be talking about how to, are we there yet is kind of the theme. It's kind of to take your pulse or your heart rate to see, yes, we're alive. Are we still running? Are we still in good health? So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to summarize in their own words what they think is the current status of enterprise augmented reality. And in particular, I'm going to ask them to give a number between 1 for we're just very, very, very beginning to 10, we're in full deployment. I'm going to ask them to describe the current status and give us a number to show where they think we are in the adoption, either in their company or in their customers, the customers with whom they're doing projects. And we'll give this about 8 minutes, and then we'll go to some other topics. So I'm going to start with Juergen. Would you introduce yourself very briefly and tell us where you think the current state is?
I was afraid that I picked the wrong spot here, being the first one. My name is Juergen Lumera. I'm Director Augmented Reality inside of Bosch Automotive After Sales. So we are a consumer and a provider of AR solutions. And to answer your question, I think we not at 10, so it will take, I think, at least next year before we get to 10. But we are pretty high, between 7 and 8 already, because the technology is at the right level. The use cases are at the right level, so people know what they want to do with it. They have a plan what they want to do with it. But this first deployment, this first large deployment is still missing in any industry. And when this is coming, it will really have a kind of an avalanche to drive all the others.
Good.
Good afternoon, I'm Peter Verstraeten from Proceedix, and we are a digital platform for workflows, inspection workflows, instructions for the industry, and then executing it with mobile and wearable technology. I have a background for about 20 years in manufacturing and logistics, and I would say that my score is probably between 1 and 2, so we're hardly anywhere. That's my point of view. In most places, and just to put it in perspective, I think we're at the level of mobile in industry, so tablet and a phone that we all know. We're even there, not yet at level 5 or 6. So most of the things that I see, chemical industry, pharmaceutical industries, whatever you like to name, it's paper. That's what we see. And so augmented reality, or assisted reality, there might be a difference. Assisted reality a little bit easier to accept in industry, but it's still at level 1 or 2 at the best, and maybe in Europe even below level 2 compared to the US. That's at least my point of view.
My name is Marc Schuetz. I'm working for PTC. We have 2 brands which work in the AR business. It's Vuforia. I guess most of the people know the Vuforia engine and the SDK. And we also have a brand called ThingWorx Studio. I'm personally running the product management team for ThingWorx Studio. And if I'm looking at PTC and give a number, that's very difficult. So if I'm looking at our Vuforia brand, I would say this is the 10. If I'm looking at the ThingWorx Studio brand, I would say it's a 10. If I'm looking at PTC overall, we're really living and breathing AR. We try to build it into every tool we have in our portfolio where it makes sense. We will move our headquarters next year to the Boston Seaport with like another 1,000 people. And this will be an AR lighthouse. So and it will be all over with augmented reality. If you walk in, that's what you see. So we're really living augmented reality in the company. But I would still give us overall maybe a 4 or 5, because if I see the potential, there's a lot of things we can do, and it's going to be really exciting. But in our customer base, I see it completely different. There are customers who never heard about it, who really never heard about augmented reality. That's clearly a 0 or 1, as you would say. There are others who have a hard time saying this is AR and this is VR, and what is the difference? But on the other hand, we have customers who actually have a 3-4 year plan of this is what we do now, this is what we execute on the next couple of years, this is what we expect the technology changes on the hardware side, on the software side, and yeah, they are really going towards a 10, and that's really, really exciting. But that's how I see it right now.
I'm Jay Kim, Chief Strategy Officer at Upskill. Upskill builds software platforms targeting head-worn applications of AR and specifically focusing on assisted reality, which is, it's a term that's becoming better understood, but I think going off of what Marc was saying, there's still a lot of education, broadly speaking, that the industry needs to just kind of understanding the different dimensions within augmented reality, the different form factors upon which that you can go and deploy the solution. The differentiation between AR and VR. All of these things are maybe well understood to this audience for the most part, but if you project this out and you believe that AR is the next form of computing, it's the next form of people interacting with digital content, then the total kind of the number of users that it can go and hit is the global population, right? And take that isolated into the industrial workforce, and we're talking at least 1 billion people when it's all said and done. So you apply the 0 to 10 type of a scale, and and do it linearly, then yeah, you're probably at a somewhere between a 0 and a 2. Being that I'm an American company and I'm a startup, I'm gonna apply that classic American startup optimism and say that we're probably at between a 2 and a 3. And I say that specifically because there are businesses that are being represented here today and yesterday and at different conferences that have figured out that they can go and take a certain use case in isolation, certain business case, and then take that and go all the way to 10. People have figured out how to go and do that. The problem, of course, is that navigating kind of the waters to get to that proper business case, it takes time, and it's not immediately obvious to everybody that this is a journey that they can go and take and operationalize and things like that. So,
Jay, I'd like to just ask one more clarifying question on what you're talking about. That some people are excited but not clear on where their emphasis is going to be. Sometimes I call those proof of concept or pilot studies, and we've all seen that there are hundreds, and I dare say thousands of pilot projects that have been done in enterprise augmented reality. Do you see what I call pilot project fatigue? Are people getting worn out about trying again and again and again as the technology progresses just a little bit, and they're wondering, do you see pilot project fatigue? What are the signs of that, or do you not see it?
I mean, yes, of course there is of course pilot, fatigue. I think it is a valid thing, and a lot of the fatigue, if you peel back the layers, stems from the fact that it's technology for technology's sake. And being a technologist, it sometimes pains me to go and say it, but technology existing for the sake of technology does not, it doesn't go anywhere. And that's, it may seem like an obvious statement now, but I guarantee you, if we pull back and look at AWE 3 years ago, there's still a lot of technology for technology's sake, people that are excited about it, haven't figured out how to go and use it and apply it well. So a lot of the early pilot customers, including ourselves that got started on it, believed in the premise of what the technology can go and do, wanted to understand what it could do, from the realm of the possible, but failed to apply the right business case that accompanied it because, businesses ultimately have a bottom line. There was a gentleman from Coca-Cola yesterday that identified that as the reason as to how he arrived at augmented reality as one of the technologies that can go and drive outcomes.
Okay.
So, and I'll be brief with the second remark is that the way to go and get out of pilot fatigue is to get out of trying to do proof of concepts. The industry at large, and I'm seeing this in the market, is that more and more customers are starting to approach us wanting to go and do a proof of value study. And it may be a subtle difference, but it's a very important one. Perception-wise and from a business case perspective, there is a massive amount of difference between proving out the concept versus proving out the value.
Okay.
So start with that.
Excellent.
Yeah, we have now a free trial program, roughly like 5,000 companies working on proof of concepts and pilots. And the interesting part about this is a lot of them are really playing around with the technology and try to figure out what the technology can do. And if you look at who's doing this, then usually you see people, early adopters, people from a technology department, people from an IT department, people who really want to play with the technology and want to be at the forefront and know what it can do, but they don't have the business case. And this is really the difference between I'm playing around with a toy or I want to build a tool. And if you come from the business side and talk to people who actually have an issue in their use case or in their business, in their daily business, and they're losing money, and they're looking for technology who can help them, then you get from a proof of concept or a pilot to really production. And then you don't build and play around with a toy or technology, but you're really solving a business issue. And I more and more believe that people don't get tired of pilots. They love to do this. But it's really the real challenge is getting from the pilot into production. And I think this is the more critical aspect.
Great, yeah.
Okay, we with Proceedix, again, we are in the assisted reality, so the workflow execution in a hands-free way. I would say that the pilot proof of concept is still the rule, deployment is the exception. And one thing, I would say it's not a surprise, it's just the hype cycle of Gartner, as to quote it. People try it, and then a lot of people try things with expectations that were just not realistic. So they got, I would say, disappointed. But then again, it filters out to people that are really seeing the value, and from that point, again, you will build up, I would say, valid cases. So nothing abnormal with the proof of concept fatigue. It correlates with the Gartner's hype cycle. The other thing I would like to mention is that proof of concept is the rule and deployment is the exception. There is another reason behind, because it's just a huge difference between both. A proof of concept is, I wouldn't say it's easy, but for a week it will work. And your operators, because we are dealing with operators, they will, okay, the light is on, even if I don't need it, okay, I can work around it. I tap on it, it doesn't respond. I tap at another time, okay, I can live with it. Yeah, it's promising, it looks good. All of that, I would say, there is a lot of forgiveness in a proof of concept. There is no forgiveness if you deploy. Operators disappoint them 3 times in a day. They lose 5 minutes because the device goes down or whatever, or the software stops working. And they will say, sorry, but I'm managed on time and efficiency. You can have the device and it stops here. So reliability is everything in industry. And so I don't blame the industry that they're cautious in taking steps, step by step. And I can only say that there is a huge difference between a deployment and a proof of concept for a good reason, for many good reasons, I would say.
I have one, thank you. Funny, because I think there's a third version from what you said. Also, we typically have 3 phases. The first phase is a proof of concept. This is a 2-week, maybe 6, 8 weeks. You test something, you have an idea. Typically, this is with an innovation department. But then they realize pretty quickly, I need to think about how I bring this in operations. And then you set up a pilot. And a pilot is already a larger deployment. And for us, we see mostly exclusive right now pilots. So pilots where you really want to test something already in the infrastructure. And we believe AR is at the moment not the hindering of deploying it because the technology is not ready. The problem is the rest is not ready for AR. Because I have to solve problems which are beyond AR. I have to solve something, I need to embed it into an existing system. I have to have a device already there. How will you deploy AR when they don't have a device with a camera, or your local law doesn't allow to have a camera because you're permanently recording? There are suddenly totally different things to bring this from a pilot to a deployment. And of course, if I disappoint my users, don't do it. Also because you waste money and time. But with a pilot, you can test this much more. But the bigger problem at the moment are the reality in which you have to establish augmented reality. Bring it with your current systems in contact. Get data from A or B. But if you have an IoT, you have a generic interface. But a lot of companies don't have this. You have to get data somewhere. And when I don't get the data, this has no value to them. And. So we see pilots are really I would say the standard right now, but it's still this threshold to get it farther because you are blocked with the infrastructure with other constraints.
That's very, very well put. Very, very insightful, and thank you, panelists. I think, just to remind everybody, what we're here to talk about is the current status. What's the current status of enterprise augmented reality? And I've heard a few people say that both Juergen and Jay, that this value proposition, we're trying to get closer and closer to some numbers. And I know that 2 of our 4 panelists are representing public companies, so they won't be able to talk about financial things or numbers. It's quite sensitive. But 2 of our panelists can speak to quantifying the impacts. And I think this is really the phase where we're going to talk about now. It's not the only important, in fact, but let's spend a few minutes about quantifying the impacts. I was really glad to see the AGCO was able, yesterday gave a case study with lots of numbers, very, very valuable to share and so forth. Peter, would you start by telling us sort of order of magnitude? How many employees or users are out there somewhere using an account, a Proceedix account? Is it hundreds? Is it thousands? Tens of thousands? What's that size?
I think we're in a magnitude of about 1,000 users, spread all over various companies. And my guess is that we're talking about 20% is glass, and the rest is mobile, tablet based. That's the current state that we are. And it correlates with the fact that most of them are proof of concepts, but okay, we have, like the Echo case, a few deployments, and we have a few contracts that we recently made for further deployment in a few companies. But that reflects the situation.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. Jay, you're also empowered to give us a few numbers, maybe about return on investments or the number of employees that are currently using Upskill technologies, ballpark. Again, same applies.
Sure. So, we look at it as to what's the total economic impact that AR and our solution, of course, is creating for our customers. And there are a couple of variables that we will typically track as a part of that process. One is time, and time is easy for us to go and measure because it's simple to measure, and it's also obvious the benefit of time saved during your business process and what that means. As a first order variable, as a way to go and determine the return on investment. So if it took you 2 hours to go and complete a particular maintenance process in an aircraft engine, if you go and cut that down by 30%, which is an average saving that we're seeing in terms of just pure time saved with a number of our customers like General Electric, Boeing, number of others that are still working with us that still haven't put their information out into the public domain and therefore do not want to be referenced. But an average cost saving and efficient productivity gain is 30%. For those of you that are in the actual business operations and are working in the industrial applications, 30% is a game-changing number. I mean, people that are in lean manufacturing and continuous improvement and things like that, a lot of those folks will spend millions upon millions of dollars chasing a 5% improvement in their operations, and that's still huge. The ROI timeline for that is still measured in months. So imagine what happens when you're able to go and do things 30% faster. Another angle that we'll go and add as a variable is the compliance angle. Being able to go and apply AR and marry that with IoT and analytics capabilities to be able to go and drive compliance, which in turn translates into quality. And last bit is being able to effectively handle and resolve exceptions in the business processes as they go and arise. The Coca-Cola example that was shared yesterday is that each of the repair trips that they have to go and pay one of their vendors' technicians to come out and go and repair a piece of bottling equipment is going to cost a minimum of $10,000 for them. So there the savings are lumpy, but each saving is it's a solution that can easily pay for itself.
Pay for itself, yeah. I'm sensitive to the fact that our time is limited. I don't want to cut off this, because this is a very, very, very important topic about the numbers. And unfortunately, we can talk about the time savings and we can talk about some benefits. Nobody talks about the costs. That's another equation. It's quite hidden. But I'd like to ask everybody to chime in on one last question, which is this the year that enterprise augmented reality is getting respect? And I don't define the term respect. I'd like you to say, if it is, you think, in your opinion, getting respect, give me an example. If it's not getting the respect it warrants, say so. What's missing? Juergen, you look ready.
Yes, Van, it's getting respect, but it's not what we are looking for. We get, I think, the last 3 years, respect. Great that you have this cool tool. What we need is a real deployment, a real application, and this is not coming this year. Because we only have 2.5 months left. We need a real deployment somewhere where a large company, large enterprise says, I was successful, I did something to really improve my business. And then we have a success, not a respect.
Okay, let's hear what Peter has to say.
I agree. I think respect, if it comes to, yes, I think there is something in it and there is value. Plenty of respect. If it's about deployment and about putting the money on the table and the effort, then I think there is much more cautiousness. So my thing is this, 2017, definitely not. 2018, I think either. It's a transition. We are in a transition. And I think that maybe one point is that I don't blame industry, because industry is not looking for technology, they're looking for a solution. And a solution needs software, hardware, and embedding in their infrastructure. Now those are 3 hurdles. I would say that software is probably the lowest, the least difficult hurdle, but we are definitely waiting for a 2nd generation, 3rd generation of hardware, new types of glasses. And then maybe if those things come together, we might see a broader, I would say, accommodation and a broader acceptance of the technology, because it's an acceptance of the solution. So I would give it another 2 years at least.
I also want to note that all of the companies on this panel provide software. Where are the hardware guys? Okay, Marc.
Okay. So from my experience in 2017, I think AR got a lot of traction, and people now talk about it. People now know what it is, and as bad as it sounds, Pokemon Go helped a lot to actually bring it into everyone's agenda. And they're like, okay, this is AR. I've never heard about it. Now I know what it is. And this obviously helps the enterprise business as well. And companies like Microsoft are pushing really hard, even if they call it mixed reality. But it's going in the same direction. I feel like 2017 was or is the year where AR is at least on everyone's agenda. And in 2018, I feel like we need to go from, going back to one of our first questions, from like pilot phases and proof of concepts into where's the real value? What is the use case? What business issue do I have? And how can I solve it with augmented reality? And I think we will see many, many more of those success stories in 2018. At least I hope so.
My view is that respect has existed, respect for AR has existed, amongst enterprise customers for a couple of years, to say the very, very least. My contention is that respect and the fact that, companies do respect AR is not made public. There are lots of companies that are doing this in isolation. You've got companies like Coca-Cola, Boeing, AGCO, and others that are starting to go and share the story. And I think that's absolutely fantastic, especially the stories that actually have some sort of, a numerical figure attached to the kinds of value that it's going and creating for their business, which is what this industry needs more of. So, certainly my call to action for those of you that are working with the technology is to go and let it be known that, this is something that you have come to respect, and that this is making an obvious impact into your business operations. If you go and peel back the industry and look at the Fortune 1000 kinds of companies, you would be hard pressed to think that there isn't one that doesn't at least have some sort of a strategy today as to, and it may be at various steps, starting from exploration all the way into full deployment. But people are starting to go and build out a multi-year strategy on how AR can be a solution to address some of their business processes and being able to go and gain efficiency.
Wow. Thank you, gentlemen. We have 30 seconds left. Does anybody want to say something for 30 seconds or a minute? Come on, some profound thoughts to part with, and will we see everybody here again next year? Okay. I think if you'd like to ask questions directly to any of the panelists, I encourage you to visit them in the exposition hall. They're there for another 2 hours, and they all have some presence there and would welcome you if you haven't already stopped by to say hello. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and close out this panel session.